So I remember very clearly, I walk into the therapist's office one day and, so at this point she's seen me almost probably 4 years through this experience. So she's sitting there and I remember I sit down and she looks at me and she says, you know what? She's like, you're not really making that much progress. Not the thing you want to hear from the therapist, but it's also
No.
probably, she hands me a card and on the card is a phone number. And she says, I've never done this myself. She says, officially, I'm not recommending it. But she's like, I've had clients who've had it be tremendously successful, and it's ayahuasca. So at that point in my life, with all of the things that had happened and my outlook and my view, and, I'd tried different types of therapy. I'd been on every antidepressant on the market. I felt like I had tried everything. And so at that point, I would have done it like right there in her office. But, well,
Okay.
one, that wasn't an option.
Welcome to another episode of What's Up with DJ Podcast, your number one place to find out all things that interest me and hopefully you as well. Be sure to visit our show description to learn more about the What's Up with DJ Podcast. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. So today's theme is plant medicine ceremony and remembering who you are. And my guest is for this episode is Ruger Hebert, the owner and director of MexiSoul Retreats, and the host of the podcast Remember Who You Are. After his own life-changing experience with plant medicine, Ruger created MexiSoul, a retreat center in Mexico dedicated to offerings, a safe and supportive space where participants can truly remember who they are. Ruger's background is as unique as his path. He began in engineering and even spent MexiSoul. He is also developing an online integration community called Soul in partnership with his sister, designed to extend support and connection beyond the retreat space. Through his podcast, Remember Who You Are, Ruger invites guests to share their own powerful journeys with plant medicine, creating a platform for stories of healing and transformation. Ruger, welcome to the show.
Thanks, DJ. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. So, what is plant medicine?
Plant medicine is a really powerful tool that helps strips away these layers of programming. And when I say programming, I just mean what we've accepted about true from ourselves from a variety of sources, whether that's parents, religion, society, our jobs, social media, and then a really, really defining one is trauma. And
Mhm.
those things help us shape well, they don't help us. They create a version of our reality, but they may not necessarily be true. And so what plant medicine does is it kind of strips away or removes some of those layers. So then you're able to kind of see this essence of who you are just as a person.
So, what are some of the examples of plant medicine that, if I was to attend a Mexi Soul retreat, that I'll have a chance to um, help me to do those things you just mentioned?
Well, so specifically, the medicines we work with are ayahuasca, primarily, which is a DMT based substance, and then we also started a second type of retreat. They're not used together, but a second type of retreat with psilocybin.
What are some of the reasons you or anyone would feel the need to uh, try ayahuasca or try any kind of plant medicine?
Well, I think for anybody that comes to our retreat center, I'd say there's probably on one end of the spectrum, there's people that are coming for usually from a place of almost desperation, like they
Mhm.
don't know what to do. They're feeling very, very lost in their lives, or they are almost in a state of like crisis mode or just no other answers. That's actually where my first experience came from. I would say that's probably maybe 1 out of 5 people, though. I would say on the other end of that spectrum are people who are, you could probably say, very well equipped at dealing with life. You could probably say, like on a baseline scale of happiness on a daily basis, they're probably fairly high on that scale. And they are coming more just to gain like an expansion of consciousness or to see what is possible with the human condition. And then I would say the majority of people, the other 3 out of 5, are probably just your average, normal, or what you would define as normal human being that is
Mhm.
just kind of questioning of like why we're here, what your
Mhm.
purpose is. I think typically there's a lot of people in that demographic too that are at a crossroads.
When you first did ayahuasca, correct me if I'm wrong, you were a poker dealer in Las Vegas, right? Or then I'm gonna get the timeline right.
Yeah, well, we can go through the timeline, but overall, poker dealing was like that was like plan D. That was never really part of the plan.
Mhm.
But what led me, yeah, well, I mean, what led me to ayahuasca was reaching basically a point of desperation.
So what's your state of mind at that particular point?
My first experience was in May of 2021, so about 4 years ago. I had just reached a point where I believed in nothing. And not only
Hmm.
believed in not like so I had both kind of like an atheist view of the world and also a very nihilistic one. So which is basically I'm coming from a place that like life is meaningless, life is pointless. You live, you suffer, and you die, and that's all there is. And I had really gotten to a point very much of depression, anxiety, hopelessness, very much of this just like existential kind of crisis, but it was just very internalized. And at the same time, I think that pain, those feelings associated that were so um, deep and but suppressed that it caused
Hmm.
a lot of those like conditions.
So you're working in as a poker dealer in Las Vegas, and something happens that leads you to have your, uh, I guess, I don't know if it caused you to have want to do ayahuasca, try ayahuasca, or did it just sort of get you to question, would this be something that I'd be interested in?
For me to tell you how what led to my first experience, which
Mhm.
also gives a bridge to how this retreat started in the first place. I can speak about some of the events that led to that,
Mhm.
and they're gonna sound disconnected, but I promise they will all lead to this place. Kind of, I mean, this may be a bit emotional too, but I think I think it's important to just share the aspects of this, and this is kind of why I'm doing this too in the first place.
Okay.
So the first thing that happened is this happened about 17 years ago from today.
Mm.
So I'm sitting in the car with my mother, and we get a call from the FBI. And so
Well,
my dad turned out we get a call on this phone call, and it said that my dad had assaulted a male flight attendant on a chartered plane back from Canada on a work trip. And this was something that like I mean, this was out of a movie because this was completely like not at all characteristic of my father at all. So what ended up happening is he had had a bit of like undiagnosed mental illness, and he had a breakdown on an airplane and ended up being in a mental institution in the state of Ohio for several months. Um, the first time we saw him, like he did not, he didn't recognize who we were. I will say that he is okay now. He's fine. Turned out he was undiagnosed bipolar, and
mm,
then after a period of time, he came back to reality, and then
mm,
he was released back to where he lived at the time, which is in a city at the top of the state of Nevada, and he was released to the care of a doctor, and that doctor, you know, periodically checked in with him, adjusted his medications, acted as kind of a therapy modality for him, and kind of got, in addition to getting him stabilized, like was his primary like care person for a while until he was able to return to normal life, which he is still, I mean, fine now. Now we're going to jump back in time from today to 10 years ago. So, so this is 10 years ago from today, and I am had just moved to Las Vegas, and I had, like as I mentioned at the beginning, I had struggled with anxiety and depression and kind of those feelings of hopelessness. And so I just moved to Vegas. I hadn't been there that long, and I was very isolated. I mean, I was self isolating, but I um, I basically had gotten to a point where I was experiencing large amounts of suicidal ideation, and um, realized that I needed to check into a facility. So I checked myself into a mental health facility. So when I walk into there and do the intake, there's a doctor who's there who does the intake for me. And it's interesting because when you introduced me in the podcast, my name is very unique. My name is spelled Hebert, but it's pronounced
Mhm.
Hebert. Hebert. So the doctor who's doing the intake in Las Vegas looks at my name and he says, "How do you say your name?" And then he's like, "What's your dad's name?" And then he's like, "Okay." He's like, "I can't say anything, and I'm also
Mhm.
not going to say the doctor's name, but he's like, you need to ask your dad about me and who I am and where this happened." So it ended up being the exact same doctor that had
Oh,
treated my
wow.
dad from, I mean, it was 17 years ago, but about, yeah. So he treated my dad, and then about 6 years later, he coincidentally in a completely different city, 8 hours away, saw me. So he had moved there, worked at a different place, and he ended up running into me. Right.
Wow.
Okay. So then from there, um, I get stabilized, I get grounded, and this doctor uh, signs me to a therapist. So I'm seeing a therapist in Las Vegas. And at this point, um, this is about 8 years ago from today. And so I'm seeing this therapist over a period of time. So she's a licensed therapist. I got benefit from it. And then she also did Reiki at the end of it. She did licensed, professional therapy, and then she did 10 minutes of Reiki. So I thought the Reiki was bullshit. Because if you, if you go back to my ideas and my beliefs, it's just, there's nothing like you just, whatever. You're moving energy or whatever through your, okay. But I did gain some benefit from seeing her and what she offered. So then
Okay.
I see her over the course of, well, I see her over the course of many years. So I see her from the time that the doctor assigns her until about when COVID happens. And so over this time, I'm seeing her, but I'm also heavily self-medicating with alcohol. And then COVID happens. And so during COVID, my use of alcohol to escape from feelings and emotions became a problem. In Vegas, COVID was very strict lockdown. I mean, you could walk down Fremont Street, Las Vegas Boulevard, which is a 24-hour town, and it was a zombie town. I mean, you could walk down the middle of the
Wow.
street during COVID. I started, this existential like crisis, this depression. Now you're isolated. There's no end in sight. So I started drinking very heavily too. And during that time, like I started to realize like I am having pain in my liver area. And I'm like, this is becoming a problem. And I'm basically, I don't know what to do. But I was seeing the therapist. So then the therapist is like, well, maybe you should go to rehab. All right, sure. Cause, at least I would see people and have access to like a gym and exercise and things like that. In rehab, I end up developing a relationship with a woman from that also went to rehab, and that's one of the first things they tell you is like this isn't the place to have a romantic relationship, and I think anyone can kind of figure out that for obvious reasons. But developed a relationship with this girl in rehab, left rehab, and this relationship continued with this person for about 6 months. Of course, going back to it turned relatively toxic. There was this dynamic where this individual would like get lonely and then come back and then leave and then come back and leave and come back. And of course, like I allowed it. It was very much, it wasn't one person doing anything wrong. It was very much us
Mhm.
having like a just unhealthy kind of relationship that was like back and forth, back and forth. So I was on this emotional roller coaster for a very long time. And I'm also sober during this entire time. Like I stopped drinking. It's about 2020 in the timeline right now,
Okay.
probably leading into close to 2021. I'm still seeing this therapist. There's this on and off relationship with the individual from that I'd met in rehab, and I am doing much better in life because there's stability. There's things returning to normal. I am sober, which is a huge aspect. I walk into the therapist's office one day. So at this point, she's seen me almost probably 4 years. And I remember I sit down and she looks at me and she says, "You know what?" She's like, "You're not really making that much progress," which is something, not the thing you want to hear from the therapist, but it's also
No.
probably, probably what maybe a good therapist should say. At that point in my life, with all of the things that had happened and my outlook and my view. And, I'd tried different types of therapy. I'd been on every antidepressant on the market. I felt like I'd tried everything. And so at that point, I would have done it like right there in her office. But, well,
Okay.
one, that wasn't an option. And then two, I just wanted to make sure it was done in like a safe, contained environment. I didn't have any hesitation to do it, but I wanted to not be like, I wanted it to not wake up in the like a horror movie where like someone stole your kidneys and you're in a bathtub alive,
Right.
something like that. So I start calling this trail of clues on the number. So then there's all these kind of like synchronous things that are lined up. I think it was maybe 2 weeks from the ceremonies were going to be like 2 weeks. So then I confirm. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna attend this ceremony, and I'm a little nervous, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. The woman that I had been in a relationship from rehab reaches out for probably like the 10th time or something and says that she's going to come to Vegas that weekend, the exact same day as the ayahuasca. So
Mhm.
then I'm like, whatever, don't need to do ayahuasca. I want to see like everything is going to come back to normal and this person will make me happy. I mean, this is probably why the person is coming in into my life because I'm also relying on somebody else to make me happy. But
Mhm.
anyway, so she says she's gonna come back. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna not do the ayahuasca ceremony. All right, you know, whatever. Okay, and then now it is it is 2 days before the ayahuasca ceremony. I'm sitting in my car by myself, alone, with no one there, and I get a text message on the phone. And the text message on the phone is from the woman that I had been dating. And the text message just says, "I'm going to come to Vegas and I'm not going to see you."
Wow, that's pretty straightforward.
Yes. But at that point, and again, I'm not on the phone with her. I'm not talking to anybody, but I just like it was enough that I was mad and frustrated and pissed off. And I'm basically just venting all of my frustrations about dating and the opposite sex and everything, just mad, mad, mad. I compose myself. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll do the ceremony, this weekend.
Yeah, your time is
Um,
free now. You're freed up.
yeah, right. So I go into the ceremony. I immediately, when I walk into that space, I felt comfortable and really
Okay.
I felt safe. There's a element of physical safety, but I realized it's an emotional safety. I go into that room and then it's Umberto and he comes in and
And
I
then who's the
immediately,
shaman?
yeah, that's the
Okay.
shaman that is working with MexiSoul Retreats now. Um, and he came in and he was very humble. One of the most important things for me too is he was very much um, he was very much informing everyone that like this isn't worshiping a plant. This isn't about me. This isn't even about the ayahuasca. This is about your process, your experience. This is just a space that we set up like for you to go deep in within yourself. And then he answered all the questions. I've told people this before, but like if I would have gone in there and it would have been a guy with like no shirt and like a headdress on, I probably would have ran out. But the fact that he was very much a grounded, like normal person
Mhm.
who is also just you could very much tell that it was not about him. I go first, and everyone else, and then here's what happens. So 4 hours go by, and for anyone that's not aware, usually ceremonies start at night, so they start around 7 or 8 p.m. And so a little more than 4 hours go by, and for me, nothing happens, not a single thing. No,
Wow, this is your
no,
first cup and
yeah,
okay.
yeah, nothing. I mean, not even like an inkling of anything. And then at the same time, there's people who are in any given ayahuasca ceremony, there's a lot of emotional things going on at the same time. So in this instance, there's someone that's laughing, there's someone that's crying, there's someone that's throwing up, there's a guy that's clearly like having a visual experience, And then I'm just sitting there like,
This doesn't work. Oh,
right.
well, it works, but it's not working on you.
Yeah. Well, then I go into a place of despair of, okay, nothing's going to work for me. I often bring a journal to ceremonies. So I was sitting there in the dark and I was writing in my journal about all of the things that had happened with my dad related to the airplane and to that incident that had happened about 17 years ago. And then, as I'm writing this, there's a person that comes over and she was basically like a server. So she comes over. I think she could see I was probably hopeless and struggling and upset and frustrated. And so she comes over and she says, "Hi." She says, "I'm a healer. Can I help you?" So in my mind, I'm thinking just, okay, bullshit, whatever, healer. Okay, sure. But yeah, why not? So she sits down in front of me and the first thing she says, she looks at me, and she says, "Wow." She says, "You're really channeling your dad right now." And then for me, I'm like, "What did you say?" And she's like, "Oh, you're really channeling your dad right now." And then I just was like, "Bullshit." I'm like, "You saw me write this in my journal. Okay, cool. Like, got you, lady." And then,
Mm,
so then this is what happens. So she sits down in front of me and she's like, "All right." She's like, "Well," she's like, "First of all," she's like, "I don't have my glasses." She's like, "Second of all, it's almost 1 a.m. and it's dark in here." And then third, she's like, "I'm going to try something with you." And so she takes out a blindfold and blindfolds herself.
okay.
So I am like, okay, this is weird, but whatever. And so then she asks if she can take my hand. So then she starts telling me all these incredibly specific details of like what the situation that had happened with my dad, talking about an airplane, talking about, yeah, all very, very, very specific details.
Okay. Okay.
Um, then she starts talking about a situation like with the person that had happened at work. And then she starts telling me all these like habits I should change. And then she starts telling me all these things. And like, keep in mind, like I still am, but I'm very skeptical. So I know what cold reading is. I'm not saying like a word.
Hmm.
So right in this moment, I am immediately trying to just rationalize and figure out everything. I'm trying to just gain like what is going on.
Hmm. So you paranoid at this particular point?
I'm not paranoid. It's just like I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying. Okay,
Mm.
I like we are humans. We live, we suffer, we die. There's nothing else. There's nothing else that exists. And I'm now in the ayahuasca ceremony, and this woman is telling me details about my life that nobody could possibly know.
Okay.
So then I'm trying to rationalize this, and then during this time, I felt like my mind was kind of like trying to break out of its box. But then I'm like, I got it. Like I realize it. I'm like, okay, I know what's happening.
Mhm.
I'm like, I have told the therapist all of these things. I've told the
Oh,
therapist
okay.
every single thing that this girl has mentioned. I've told the therapist this. So somehow they knew each other and they got together and they've been talking. And this was like an elaborate
Mm.
plan to like
That's the
help
paranoia.
me.
I mean, that's the
Uh huh.
paranoia. Because now it's like you're saying to yourself that okay, the reason why she knows this is because
Hmm.
my therapist told me about this place and they're working together in conjunction.
Yeah. So I had it all figured out. And then about 15 seconds after I had it all figured out, this woman who's in front of me with the blindfold on, like turns her head to the side, and then she's not looking at me, but she basically is looking at me, and she says, "Why were you saying such bad things about women in your car yesterday?" And so in that moment, that was when I broke. That was when I broke like the ego. I do not believe the ego dies, but I
No, I don't
believe
believe it.
like I had what you could closest to describe as like a death of ego. Like it was just all I had this moment of just realizing everything I'd put into a box in the entire world was it
Mhm.
broke. And like so I in that moment, the way I only way I could describe it is I had this. I mean, I had a proof in undeniable proof that just happened that there's something greater than ourselves. A
Mm,
evidence, absolute evidence of like a higher consciousness, which to
mm.
me, for me, was just so also just humbling. And in that moment, when she said that, when that happened, all of this happened in an instant. My mind broke, and then everything I had held in released. And then also the ayahuasca kicked in right during that moment.
Oh,
So I had
okay.
basically this just break, flood, release of everything, a release of all these emotions, release of all of these things that been holding in. And she couldn't even like hold my hand at that point. So she had to leave and was like, okay, I'm going to let you have your own experience. And then so during that experience, there was the normal parts of ayahuasca. There was this, I mean, I threw up during that. I was
Mhm.
throwing up all these like emotional aspects. But then, like, the most profound thing that happened is it was this complete shift in perspective because it was like something like picked me up, grabbed me, and was just like, look at this. Look at this chain of events that had to happen in order for you to be here.
Wow.
It was like this, all of this happened with your dad that led him to a doctor. That doctor ended up being led to you several years later. That doctor prescribed a therapist. That therapist suggested you go to rehab. In rehab, you met a woman who, it was difficult and challenging and whatever and hurt. And then what just happened now involved that woman and all of it happening. Every single thing that happened in the exact way it was supposed to be, and it was
Hmm.
all perfect, all perfect. And that was something for me that just broke open all the doors, that changed everything in my life, that completely just like rewired just like what happens in your life, what people experience, why they experience it. Every single thing. I couldn't look at the world differently, or I couldn't look at the world the same way ever
Hmm.
again.
So, what was it like the next day? I don't know. I know sometimes retreats can last a one day or it can last many days. But so did you guys all leave and go home?
So basically, for that first time, it was one single ceremony. And then
Okay.
also the person that was in front of me, people ask this sometimes. It was a real person. Like this happened.
Okay.
And then I decided I was going to do this about once a month. And then I kind of did this once a month. And then it wasn't a magic wand, but I just started to rapidly change. I mean, I basically, over the course of 6 or 7 months, lost about 70 pounds.
Wow.
Um,
And this picture of you is where you were when you were in Las Vegas, working as the uh a poker dealer, and this is around the same time frame.
mhm, yeah.
The the evolution that happened on the external side, things that happen on the inside, but there are things that are happening as well on the outside because of the inside changing.
Yeah.
Because the question
I
I was
think,
asking you was that,
sure.
the next day, because I mean, all this is happening
Yeah.
while you're under the influence of ayahuasca. So now that the effects of ayahuasca have waned off, and so now this the next day. What is your thought process?
Well, actually, immediately the next day, so I had hardly slept at all. I'd thrown up, and so I still had like vomit on my shirt.
Hmm.
And the next day, after getting like stabilized and settled, I remember driving home, and like I hadn't taken a shower. I was like probably smelled horrible. My hair's messed up, and I remember just driving home being like, I feel fucking great. Like it's the best I have felt forever. And then I think what happens. I think no matter what, and all with plant medicine, your mind does have a tendency to want to go back to old behaviors and old habits. So
Hmm.
like, I'd mentioned that I had struggled with suicidal ideation. That's a thing that I'd struggled with for many years. Like that didn't just disappear overnight, but it just started to become like less frequent and less louder, and like all of the kind of fear parts of my life
Mm-hmm.
started to, they did not disappear, and I think it is important to realize that. But they kind of started to soften. I don't think the journey ever ends.
Right.
But like over the course of time, I had these huge leaps and strides in thought patterns, in perception, in intentions, in the way I saw the world, the way, and then, from there, it's just over the last 4 years, it's been a continual growth process. Like the old things in my life don't exist anymore. Like for me, going out and partying isn't a thing anymore. So a couple days later, after that first ceremony, I went back to my job to work. And I just noticed that I had always had some social anxiety, especially with my job because I was a poker dealer. So I'm sitting in front of people, and I always had, this fear, this social anxiety. And I realized, like, when I went back a few days later, that was still definitely there, but it was like the dial was turned down. Whatever broke me open so wide in the very first ceremony
Mm-hmm.
was something that made me kind of open enough to just be like, okay, like whatever I'm supposed to be doing, let's do it. I'm taking all these pictures. So then I also, when I come back, I'm putting them on Facebook, and I have all these people reaching out. Some people I haven't talked to for years, like from high school, from old friends, family, and they're seeing me. And you can show that picture because it's a huge change. They start to see that. Then they
Mm.
see all these pictures of like this space in Mexico that's also just beautiful. And then I'm there, like some of these things to develop this retreat happen naturally. Like, because I was getting people that were saying, like, oh, you should start like a blog about like all of this experience and putting these
Mm.
pictures. So it's like I
Mm.
already kind of had started putting together a website before I developed the website. So it was almost like it just, I was open to whatever came up, and then it just kind of happened. And then
Yeah.
my sister, who I'm working on the integration program, was the very first person that ever signed up. I think a lot of the reasons that this started in the first place was they saw my transformation, and they saw the
Mm-hmm.
difference that it made, and that's also the place that I started this from. Because like I never in my wildest dreams imagine I'd be doing this. I never set out. This is a business now, but I never set out to create a business of an ayahuasca retreat. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
never my intention. It started from a place, my own transformation, and some of it, my own pain in my
Mm-hmm.
life, and kind of transforming that. And then, at the same time, I think just wanting to give that and share that experience with other people.
The program that you offer to your participants, how do you begin to set up the program that you utilize? I'm quite sure it's evolved over time, but what is the program like at this particular point that you provide to your participants?
Well, something that we realized really, before we even started, something that we realized is just how important it is to create the environment. So I think
Hmm.
with plant medicine, there's the two most important things are like your intentionality for going into it, like what the reason is. Um, and maybe we can touch on that after, like just the difference between going and taking mushrooms in the woods and this. One of the most important aspects is the setting and the environment. I think I had talked about safety at the beginning of this, and like obviously physical safety is a huge one, but being able to be supported through whatever process you need to go through is incredibly important. And so
Hmm.
that was something that I really had started with the beginning of kind of creating like guidelines of how that should be, should that how that should happen. And then like with our retreats, the majority of the people who are in that role are also female, which I think is just by definition kind of this more caretaking and empathy and understanding
And
and
nurturing. Hmm.
yes, nurturing is a really good word. And I think that a lot of the majority of our staff is female. The retreat center is owned by a woman, and so that element that I think is really, really important is there is a huge amount of just feminine energy and support. But something that we really wanted to create is pretty much smaller, intimate groups. Um,
Mm,
so we have a huge the property itself is huge, but the most we allow in a retreat is 18 people, and I think that kind of adds to this dynamic where people it's a group size that kind of ends up supporting each other too through it, and I think
mhm,
that's really important. Like that's why we have a combination of this like traditional aspect of it, where we're
mhm,
still very much honoring the traditions, the energy, the tobacco smoke, the traditions of our shaman is Shipibo trained, but at
mhm,
the same time, like we have a psychiatrist there. Our goal is to create an environment that is best for the guest, not where
mhm,
it's very focused on like tradition or very focused on one aspect.
mhm,
However we can serve the person the best in their process is like
mhm.
what we aim to do.
So, looking at your program, you offer, I see a lot of meals where you're
Hmm.
getting fed. And I see that, it's music is a big part because, I think any ayahuasca retreat that you're going to go to, they're going to be something called Icaros that are a
Hmm.
song during the actual retreat itself. So you talk about a little bit about the food that you serve and the music that the participants hear during the retreat, and is held in something called a maloka,
Hmm.
the retreats, and also um some of the things that the participants will enjoy while they're there, not just the ayahuasca and the plant medicine itself, but also other activities.
Yeah. So first of all is the food. If you're going to go to an ayahuasca retreat, this is probably some of the best food you're going to get. Because I've also gone and they're very, very um, limited on what they serve. Part of that is for a good reason, because if you're going to do ayahuasca, you really need to um, follow some type of diet.
Hmm.
It's important to come into it like as clean, natural, organic as possible. Um, there are there are ways to do it too, as far as a diet. We can be very, very strict on it, and we kind of try to find a balance in between that. But we do have mostly vegetarian, but with some chicken and fish. But it is all um, there's a lot of thought and care that's put into the diet or the
Hmm.
food.
Hmm.
And then as far as the musicians, that's also something that I think is really unique about the place we have. So all of the musicians actually do take medicine during the ceremony. And so they kind of weave this experience that is they're able to kind of feel and sense the energy of where it's going. And then there's kind of this flow to where the whole ceremony goes and where like the kind of the energy goes and how that plays out with the music they're playing too as well. So they're very, very the musicians that we have are very, I would say, use the word devoted to like this the medicine, the that type of experience. I mean, we're not just finding, oh, this person's a good musician. There are people that are local that are very much involved and are very much a part of like the ceremony space and the plant medicine space.
And also, it's not, the participants are not just going there just for, a participant can go there just for the plant medicine, but there are other amenities that they enjoy outside of the medicine itself. So you talk a little bit about some things. Of course, we get back to the medicine,
Sure.
'cause there's things outside of ayahuasca that you guys offer during the ayahuasca retreat itself. But some of the amenities that they can possibly enjoy while they're there, because you offer a 7-day retreat.
So for the facility itself, there's a pool, there's horseback riding, and then huge property to explore. And then also during this 7 day retreat, we do other either you could use the word ceremony or maybe traditional practices, but things that don't involve psychedelic, but like
Yeah.
a Tema's call, which is a traditional Mexican sweat lodge. There is a fire circle ceremony, which is a symbolic way of letting go of attachments. And so there's all these other experiences that are kind of woven into the retreat experience that complement the medicine. They complement the medicine in a variety of ways and also contribute to integration. And, there could be an entire episodes on integration, but the integration is basically taking the process of taking what you experienced in the ceremony and then integrating it into your life, so you're able to um, bring those back to like the whole to your own person. And so
And
we
we'll get into the integration and also a project that you're working on now
Mhm.
that's dedicated to integration. But I did want, I'm looking at pictures and things, and it definitely looks like a resort sort of, I mean, I've seen pictures of different ayahuasca ceremonies, and it's sort of kind of like they're out in the boonies in the
Mhm.
bush, with the mosquitoes and the flies and the rabbits and whatever, and yours looks more like a resort type setting. Not just sort of out in the middle of nowhere, sort of um slumming it,
Well, I
so to speak.
try I try not to use the word resort because I do think that is implications. But when someone
Uh,
asks me like, okay, like be straight up, what is this like? I kind of tell them I kind of tell them that it's in between like glamping and a resort because like there's all the rooms, running water, electricity, there's like electric heaters in the rooms. Um, you'll be you'll be comfortable but not too comfortable, and I really
mm,
think that actually serves a purpose because ayahuasca is something that teaches you to sit in discomfort, to experience these like emotional feelings that you have been resisting, to allow yourself to fully feel and experience things that you may not want. I mean, anger, loneliness, pain. It kind of teaches you to let allow yourself to feel those, validate those, and then let those go. And I think even as something as simple as the rooms is a consideration, when we're doing this, because it
mm.
is an environment where you're going to be well taken care of, and that's very important. But we also try to create the space too, where it's like, there'll be some mosquitoes there if you want that.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was definitely about, you guys also offer a psilocybin retreat, but inside of your ayahuasca retreat, there are other medicines that you guys offer as well, along with not during the ayahuasca retreat itself, particularly, but looking at the schedule, you offer a bufo ceremony and there's a camo ceremony. So what are sort of those medicines are like, and what would the participants experience during those ceremonies?
So we have two types of retreats. One's primarily the ayahuasca retreat. And during that retreat, we're working mainly, any of the psychedelics are all DMT based. In general, like it's not a good idea to cross like different types of medicines, but these are all DMT based medicines. So you have ayahuasca, which is a mixture of two components. One is a source of DMT, and one is an MAO inhibitor. Those plants are the very old, traditionally used, and that medicine comes from either Peru or Brazil. And then another one of the medicines we offer during the retreat is named Satori, and it is also DMT based. So it is the same two components as ayahuasca. It's just one of the plants, or both of the plants, excuse me, are native to Mexico. The DMT source is Tepesco weedy, and the MAO inhibitor is some Syrian rue. And then Bufo is also DMT based. It is a little bit different of a chemical composition of DMT. So it's 5-MeO DMT. That actually does not come from a plant. It comes from a toad. It exists in Sonora Desert. But I do think it's important that, so we have a variety of options. We kind of let people choose their experience, but I do think it's important to reiterate the fact that these are all DMT based. So it's not just we're, throwing a handful of different things. It is also carefully planned out. And then with the psilocybin retreats, those are almost primarily psilocybin. We do have one of the Satori ceremonies during the psilocybin retreat, but we give people the option whether they'd like to experience psilocybin for all three ceremonies or a little bit of their choice. The reason for that is this is getting into a little bit of a spiritual element, but the vibrational match of Satori is close to that. And then the one I glossed over on is during the ayahuasca retreats, we also offer a medicine called Kambo. Kambo is something that is non-psychedelic. It basically is a way to speed up your own body's detoxification process to prepare yourself for going into the ceremonies.
So, a lot of people who are coming to psychedelics, to plant medicine, they are looking for a way to like sort of rewire their brain. And I read articles that has some scientific information or data that says how psychedelics and plant medicine itself rewires the brain or gives someone an emotional reset.
Yeah. So I think the word is neuroplasticity. And what it can kind of do is over the course of time in your life, you develop neurological connections and that create a pathway between an event occurring and then a response. The way I've heard it described in a non-scientific way is if you imagine a ski hill and over the course of the season there are all these pathways that are carved from from skiers going in the same direction. And what this kind of does is it's kind of like when there's a new fresh snow and now you're able to kind of carve out newer pathways easier. And this is something that you also need to work on a personal level, because if you were to take ayahuasca, it's easier to create these new pathways, these new methods of thinking, these new perceptions. But if you did make absolutely no changes to your environment, to your life, to your job, to your habits, if you went back exactly how everything was and you made no effort whatsoever to change, then you'd probably just go down those same pathways again.
But what is integration and what's the benefit of it? Why do you even include that in your retreat?
The benefit of integration is to continue that process that you started and when you leave the ceremony. And you're able to get a glimpse of that feeling of like joy and gratitude, and it's kind of the integration is going back to that space. That's why we encourage people to do integration, though, because it isn't always an easy process. So for example, if you imagine that you've been in a house your whole life and there's no lights on in the house, and in this house there's all these messes, like there's these dirty dishes and there's these things in the laundry in the corner that hasn't been done, and there's cobwebs, but the house is completely dark and you're just there and you don't really know what's there and you don't know if it exists or even not because it's completely dark. So after a plant medicine experience, it's like turning on the lights in the house. So you have this beautiful space, you have this beautiful house, but there's these messes. And sometimes when I say those messes, they might be things that you don't really want to look at. They might be things that, I realize that I treat people this way because this is the way my parents treated me, or this is something that was traumatic for me and now is affecting like the way I have my patterns in relationships. I use the word cleaning up the messes, but I don't want to make them the messes. What really needs to happen is integration, is looking at those parts as valuable parts that you're integrating back into yourself.
What were some of the things that a participant is going to hear, see, do during an integration segment within the retreat?
Well, so first of all, we have a woman who is an integration coach who also happens to be a psychiatrist. So she
Mhm.
has experience in trauma informed care. She has psychedelic assisted therapy certification. And then she has a lot of experience in her own life of having these, one on one dynamics with people who are dealing or struggling with things outside of plant medicine. She also has a lot of experience with plant medicine herself. And so she's able during the retreat, she has a couple functions. One of them is that she has these group integration meetings. Some of those prepare people for the medicine themselves. Some of them are kind of like what to anticipate or what to expect when you leave. So when you
Mhm.
leave here and you're open and you're having all these emotional things come up related to what you experienced in the ceremony, you have an idea. One, you realize, okay, this is normal. Like
Mhm.
I'm crying or I'm feeling this emotional, response when I leave. One, it's normal. Two, like kind of like how to work through that, how to kind of let yourself go through that. Um, and then she's also available just to meet with people one on one during the retreat itself. So if they do have, there's not really a logical reason for what they're experiencing. It's more just their consciousness making sense of like these emotional things leaving the body. So she's also available to act as like a support one on one during the retreats as well.
Integration really starts once you get home, right? And and you saying earlier about the good feelings you're feeling because you're leaving such an amazing environment, having these really cathartic experiences. And unfortunately, the reality is that once you leave such an amazing experience, you're going to go right back to the environment that you were before you came. And integration sounds like it would be something that would help people deal with sort of those issues that were there when they left.
You can cultivate a practice where you're
Hmm.
able to, replicate some of those things in your own life where you're giving yourself through maybe meditation or just time for yourself or things like that, where you're also giving your own yourself the space to kind of be able to experience and feel some of those things that came up in the ceremony. I'll tell you how this started though. So how the integration program started. So, I've had these incredible, powerful, transformative experiences throughout the last few years. I came to visit my sister for Christmas and I was struggling a bit. And I was struggling a bit with just like this kind of emotional turmoil because you come home for Christmas that all of your family things are triggered. And
Yeah.
so I was kind of just like, like I hadn't given myself enough of a break. And then I have like these emotional things I'm not kind of letting myself fully process. And I was just struggling a little bit. And then, I stayed at my sister's house and I noticed every morning she would do like this practice. It was only like 10 minutes long, but she'd do this practice and it looked just like, okay, she's meditating. And then I'm like, hey, can I join you? And then what I found out is that she had developed and cultivated this practice for the last 4 years of doing that. And so I joined her for this, simple meditation practice. And she was kind of taking all these like components that she'd learned over the course of time and doing something simple with it, grounding herself in her body, like being present in her body, like letting herself feel these emotions. And so I was doing this every day with her.
You do have an integration program. I did mention it earlier in the intro called Soul. To tell them a little bit more about that.
Well, so that is not available yet, but it will be soon. We kind of came up with even this question, like what, like everyone, there's a lot of people, we try not to, there's a lot of people that are doing this alone.
Yeah,
With our
unfortunately.
retreats, we do have an integration part of it. We do have a component of it. But even in that, there's people that still go back and they're not at the place. And so we just had this concept that it's still in development, but of like, we want to create it in a way where like, we're not teaching anything. We're not telling you this is what you need to do. We're not the teachers. It's just, we are creating this community where people feel supported. And then my sister and I can just share and kind of document and offer what has been beneficial for us through,
Mhm.
a more structured kind of like programs. Yeah. So soon we're going to have an online community that is offering more of those tools, more documenting my experience and my sister's experience, what we've learned over the last few years, and then just giving a space for also people to kind of come together.
Oh, that's awesome.
I believe that the process after the retreats and after the ceremonies is also incredibly important. I think it's as important as the medicine. I think is what
Mhm.
you are doing with this mind-blowing experience you've had is very important. And I'm realizing that more and more in my own self, um, too.
Well, is there any other thing you want to mention before we wrap it up?
The only other thing that I might mention is just that if anyone is interested, I still am happy personally to have a phone call with anybody who's interested in, kind of on the fence on coming. I offer that still, like as my time and my contribution, just to be able to have a phone call with anyone that's interested, personally answer their questions or concerns too as well.
How do they reach out to you? How do they get a hold of you?
So the easiest way is if you just check out the website. There's email,
MexiSoul.com.
yeah, MexiSoul.com. There's a email link on there. You can even book a call through Calendly. There's the WhatsApp number on there. The WhatsApp number, goes to the MexiSoul, but I will eventually get the message and I'll be on the call with you.
And I'll leave those links in the description.
I do also have a new podcast called Remember Who You Are podcast, and we just talk about people's experiences with plant medicine, kind of a before what the experience was like and afterwards.
Okay, and they can learn more about the actual MexiSoul retreat by going to MexiSoul.com. Are there any promotions or discounts that you're offering for the MexiSoul retreat?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna do one word. I'll do what's up, DJ, one word,
Mhm.
and for anyone that uses that code from this podcast, you'll get $100 off any retreat.
Cool, and I'll have that down in the description as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to share these experiences. I think, um, in my life, I've kind of realized that like vulnerability also opens up people. There's a quote that I heard that I really liked, and it's actually Rebecca Black from a book called Light is the New Black. And she said, "Bless the things that break you down and tear you open because the world needs you open." So I believe that that's something that I'm happy to share, my experiences with the world if it benefits somebody else.
It does. It does. That's a great quote, by the way. Well, thank you for
Thank you.
joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation. And again, if you guys have any questions about the podcast itself, you can email me at dj@whatsupwithdj.com. And you can also check out my Instagram and Facebook accounts. I have those links in the description as well. All right, take care. I'll see you next time.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. Please join us next week for another episode. You can contact the show by visiting www.podversation.me or emailing DJ at whatsupwithdj.com. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow on Apple Podcast. Until next week, take care and be blessed.